Gentlemen. I'm here to interview Euan McTear, a journalist and author of several La Liga-related books, um, among others, Hijacking La Liga, How Atletico Madrid Broke Barcelona, and Real Madrid's Duopoly on Spanish Football, available on Amazon and other stores if you'd like to buy it. Very informative read. So thanks for coming on, Euan. Now I just want to start off with, you know, Atletico are in a bit of a pickle here. After an 18 game, I believe it's 18 game unbeaten streak in La Liga, Atletico have lost two straight matches uh, this month, one to Real Betis and one to Atletico Madrid, and I mean one to Real Madrid. Sorry, and also a few weeks before they dropped out of the Copa del Rey to Girona. So I just want to get your take. What's the state of mind going into Atletico's round of 16 tie with Juventus right now?
I think the state of mind is that their season is now all surrounded, all based on this Juventus game. Beforehand, they were one of the favourites, obviously, for the Copa del Rey, as they always are. They were in the La Liga title race. They were the closest challengers to Barcelona. And then they've had a few terrible weeks to start off 2018. And all of a sudden, they drop out the Copa del Rey on away goals against Girona. Very unlucky offside goal rolled out late on from Santiago Arias. The game just sort of there was a few fine margins went against them, and all of a sudden they found themselves out of the Copa del Rey. And then similarly in the league, they went to Real Betis last weekend. They could have got a penalty for a Zuhair Fadal foul on Alvaro Morata in the 55th minute, I think that was. Probably should have been a penalty. And then 8 minutes later, at the other end, Felipe Luis gives away a penalty. Betis take the lead and hold on. And then we had the Madrid derby last weekend where a few marginal calls went against them. And all of a sudden, a couple of bad performances, a bit of bad luck, and now their season comes down to one Champions League tie against a team that's probably one of the favourites to win the whole competition.
Um, what's the difference you think between this Atletico side and Atletico side's past? Because just looking back to last summer, I really did think that this was the first really good summer transfer window that Atletico had. Gelson Martins, who by the way has been tearing it up
Mm,
for Monaco in his first few games in France on
yeah,
loan. For me, it seemed like a really good signing. Thomas Lemar, another one. Rodri, to his credit, has been very good and was seen as a good signing. Santiago Arias, another. It seemed like they finally had the pieces to get it done, and it just, despite a very promising window, it really hasn't panned out that way, has it?
yeah. I think the interesting thing with their rivals um, is that most of them, some of them, are doing quite well. I mean, Gelson Martins. Um, he wasn't terrible. He just wasn't given his opportunities, and then he had to make way for Morata. I think they would have liked to keep him, but they really had to clear space to fit under the La Liga salary cap. With Arias, he's become the starting right back. He's looking quite good. You've got Rodrigo, who's been fantastic. In his absence, he had a small injury. His absence in the from the starting lineup in the Madrid derby was massive. Thomas Lemar is the big one that hasn't really panned out, but that doesn't mean it can't work out in time. But I think the thing when I look at the transfer window for Atletico last summer, the big thing for me is not the arrivals, it's the departures. And as much as players like Gabby and Fernando Torres were older and footballistically aren't at the same level as the guys that came in, I mean, there's you cannot underestimate the significance that they had in the dressing room, the sort of determination, all of the intangibles. These guys had it. They had this sort of grit, desire, love for Atletico that helped get Atletico over the line so often in the past. and as much as they've been replaced by some very good players, maybe they just don't have that X factor, that Simeone factor anymore, and that's I think a big loss.
Well, that's an interesting point. Talking about aging leaders who have gone,
And there's
and
more to go. There's more to
yeah,
go. If Diego Godin goes, if Felipe Luis goes, Juan Fran I think will stay for another year, but he's not really playing as much anymore, and so there's more and more of these guys will be leaving in the coming years.
right. And to your point, Juan Fran, Felipe Luis, and Diego Godin all look set to leave on free transfers this summer. And with the Champions League final being played in the Metropolitano, it seems like there's a bit of urgency to finally get this elusive trophy. But and I assume that more could go as well. Diego Costa, potentially Diego Simeone. So is there a feeling that this is last chance saloon for Atletico?
I don't think so because I think the number of transfers they made last summer, it was such a big summer in terms of transition. So I don't think those in the positions of power at the club view this as a last chance sort of season. I think they view this as a sort of transition season in a way, transition to a younger group of players, transition to a slightly more attacking style. And we have seen that a little bit. People always want Simeone to start playing, Pep Guardiola football. That's never going to happen. But little by little,
Right.
Atletico are becoming slightly more attacking. I don't think this is a last chance. A lot has been made of the fact that Champions League final is at the Wanda Metropolitano. Obviously, if they were to get there, they'd have a great chance to win it. But at the same time, I mean, not that many Atletico fans are going to find their way in, to be honest. I mean, the way UEFA divides up the tickets, so many will go to sponsors. Half of the tickets for actual fans will go to whatever team they would face, and half the tickets would go to the Atletico fans. It's not like you're going to have the kind of atmosphere you get on a regular home day. Uh, I guess you could argue they would be very comfortable playing in the stadium. They know the stadium, but remember they've only been there for 2 years. It's not like these players have been playing there for decades and know every blade of grass. I don't. It's now or never sort of narrative with the final being there. Obviously, it would be great if they could win it at their home stadium, but I think they have almost as good a chance of winning it next year as they do this year, with the final being played away next year.
Right. Um, what are some players who you feel have underperformed this
There's
season, who
probably
just aren't getting the job done?
Yeah, there's probably quite a few. Thomas Lemar is one of them. I guess one of the things we have to keep in mind is that we shouldn't judge him by his price tag. His price tag was always going to be very high. He's just trying to adapt to a new kind of style of play. He's not necessarily the kind of player Atletico have had in the past. He's a much more wide player than they're used to. I mean, Atletico used to line up with a 4-4-2, and all four midfielders were central midfielders. Thomas Lamar is not that, but he's got to sort of adapt, and Atletico have to adapt to him. So I wouldn't say he's been a major disappointment. I don't think he's unsalvageable, but yeah, he's not performed as people would have hoped. And then I think the big one really has to be Felipe Luis. I mean, his form is kind of gone off a cliff a little bit this year. Fortunately, Atletico Madrid have Lucas Hernandez, who can also play left back. Obviously, won the World Cup with France in that position. But then they've had so many injuries at centre back this season and injuries to Hernandez himself, that he's had to play in central defence. And Felipe Luis is a little bit exposed. And yeah, that's probably the two I would point out, which really hurts one side of the pitch when they both line up on the left hand side.
And Hernandez was, of course, linked to that 85 million
hmm
pound deal to Bayern. Do you see that going through this summer?
I think it could happen in the summer. I think when it came out, Atletico Madrid were very desperate to put it off to the end of the season. There were lots of reports that they got in touch with Bayern and sort of almost made a verbal agreement that if they waited to the summer, then maybe they could reduce the price a little bit. The 85 million was the fee in his release clause, but if Atletico were willing to negotiate a slightly lower fee with Bayern, he could leave for slightly less, and they get to keep him for another 6 months. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the summer. But at the same time, maybe it's again not a situation that is can't be turned around. Maybe Atletico can convince him over the next 6 months that he is better off staying put. Similar thing happened with Griezmann last year. I think around this time of year last year, Griezmann was kind of had his mind set that he was going to move to Barcelona. And by the end of the season, his mind had been swayed and he decided to stay. So maybe they can try and do something else. And maybe Griezmann can be a part of that sort of persuasion process, just like Diego Godin was key in persuading Griezmann to stay.
Right. So what do you expect of the future of Atletico? Because it feels like we're at a crossroads here, as noted with aging leaders leaving. Do you have faith? What's your expectation going into this sort of new era? I guess to start off with, do you think that Simeone will remain coach after this season?
I think he will. I always, you always wonder how long he'll be there. The fact he's changed his contract so many times, reducing it on occasion, extending it on occasion, you never know what he's thinking. And I think it just his mindset as well. Sometimes he has expected he would be gone within a few years and then decided he wants to remain. I think he'll be there for next season. I think one day, not too far from now, he might leave, and that's going to be the biggest hurdle, of course, that Atletico are ever going to face. But I think they do have a really serious problem going into next season, in the fact that so many of the players we mentioned before, Godin, Felipe Luis, these guys might be leaving in the summer. Look like they're good. Lucas Hernandez good as well. And this is a big problem for Atletico Madrid. They have more money than they've had in their history. I think they have been able to build up a reputation as one of the top clubs in Europe. And the fact that all the discussions for a potential European Super League, the fact that Atletico Madrid is one of the names included in that discussion tells you that they're now considered an elite European club at the top table. When Simeone took over, they were not that. They were a team that was just happy to be in the Champions League. They were probably Valencia's level. They've now moved to the point where they're the fourth ranked team in UEFA coefficient. They have lots of money coming from the Champions League every year. They have lots of money coming from La Liga every year. They have the financial resources. They have the stadium. They have the platform to be able to consistently buy good players, talented players. The problem is that they might be buying slightly different kinds of players than they were used to. The guys we mentioned, more attacking players, many more foreign players, for example, or players without experience of La Liga. And I think you lose something. You might get better footballers, but you don't have the same grit and determination in the that you used to have for the profile of an Atletico player. I think that's a big problem they have in the next few years. I think they'll be more talented, but I don't think they might. I think they might not be as competitive.
Do you feel are there any is there any feeling that Atletico can sort of revert to warrior mode and peak cholismo against Juve, perhaps tune it into some kind of going full top level? And I guess what I'm trying to ask is there any way that we could see the Atletico of 2014 or 2016 even against this Juventus team, or do you feel like physically it's just not possible?
No, I really think it is possible, and I'll tell you why. I think on a consistent basis in La Liga, I think they just don't have the profile player to be able to play that aggressively and that physically anymore. But I think they still have enough players and they have enough guys who can step it up on the big occasion on a European night. And the example I'll give you is last year in the Europa League semi-finals against Arsenal when they had Versalco getting sent off after, I don't know exactly, I think it was about 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something, he got sent off. And at the Emirates, under pressure, against 11 men of Arsenal, they put in an absolutely fantastic performance. They dug deep. Everybody gave everything they had. They managed to come back with the 1-1 draw. In the second leg, a big European night, chance to get to European final at home. They had a similarly combative performance and were able to pull it out. So I think on a big European night, they still can raise the energy levels enough and do it. and even some of the players that you might not expect it from. I mean, Griezmann, for example, I think is underrated in terms of his sort of fighting spirit. The amount of tracking back he does is phenomenal. That his ability to execute a slide tackle is maybe one of the most underrated aspects of his game. We saw it with France in the World Cup, and they have other players like that. The guys like Thomas Lemar. I don't think Thomas Lemar is going to be busting a gut, being physical, getting into challenges, getting into scraps in a La Liga match against Huesca. But when all the chips are on the line in a Champions League game against Juventus, I think even guys like this can step it up and do so.
Right. What's your predicted lineup for the first leg?
The interesting thing with Atletico right now is that they have so many injuries all the time that it really is quite hard to predict. But assuming there are no more injuries picked up, they could have a free injury list by then. So I reckon the lineup would be Oblak, obviously, in goals. I think Arias would start ahead of Juanfran, but that's probably the position I'd have the most doubt about. I think centre back would be Godin and Jose Maria Jimenez. Left back would be Lucas Hernandez. You'd have in the centre of midfield in the Pivote, you'd have Rodri and Thomas Partey. You'd have Saul and Koke, I think, in the sort of wider midfield positions. And then you would have Griezmann and I think Diego Costa if he's back and fit and healthy. If not, then obviously Morata.
Right. What have you made of Morata since joining Atleti?
He's been really criticised, but I don't really get it. I sort of said it at the start. Atletico season has sort of collapsed because of one or two games and a couple of games which have been decided by one or two decisions. I mean, Morata's start could have been so different. If that penalty is given to him against Real Betis, he's the hero. He won the penalty that potentially wins the game. If he scores that goal in the derby, that lob, which some images show he might have been onside for, he's the hero. He scores the equaliser in the derby against his former club. These two calls don't go his way by literally inches, millimeters, and all of a sudden people start to wonder what he's done. He's obviously not in tune with his teammates yet. That's to be expected. He's not necessarily an Atleti kind of player anyway. That would take some time for him to become one, and he only arrived like 10 days ago. But I'm impressed. He's had two big moments that were taken away from him, and if they had stood, we'd all be talking about what a great start he's had.
Yeah, definitely. The margins are really small.
So fine. Honestly,
so
like
fine.
the width of a credit card could have changed the perception we have of Morata.
No, really. What's one player who really needs to step up against Juventus for them to get a result and get through the next round?
One player to step up. I'd say Jose Maria Jimenez. I think when he plays well and when he plays at an elite level, and he can do, that's when Atletico Madrid get their really famous results. Um, but sometimes he can make mistakes, he can commit errors that can cost you the game. For example, in the derby, he gave away the penalty for Ramos. It was debatable whether it was outside, inside the box, but still a silly challenge to make, maybe. That's that area. We've seen it in the past. He's made mistakes. For example, against Bayern in the 2016 Champions League run, it almost cost him that semi-final. But at the same time, when he's
next season with Savic stepping up to center back after that.
yeah, exactly. So he's one guy that I think has a mistake in him, but when he is on his game, he can be when he's up for it, and when he's I don't know when he's in his zone, finds his zen, he can just cut out every ball and be one of the best centre backs in the world. So I think if Atletico are going to win, he's the guy that needs to step up. With Godin, for example, you know the kind of range of performance you're going to get. With most players on the team, you know the range you're going to get. But I think Jimenez's range of great performance to bad performance is larger, and it needs to be obviously at the upper scale of that range.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on, Euan. Pleasure talking to you
worries,
again.
Man.
Hope to talk to you again. Maybe you can be on the new BTL podcast even. And as such, keep up the great work with Mark and these football times and everyone. It's a pleasure.
No worries, man. Anytime. Anytime, right. Zach. Take care, mate. Speak soon. Cheerio.
Speak soon. Cheerio.